Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zack Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down two big debuts that the Orioles have had in recent days, with Dylan Beavers and Samuel Basallo joining the Major League club. Look at what it means not just for the rest of the 2025 season, but beyond. And we're going to break all of that down on tonight's episode. And really, I think the important thing here is that in the late stretch of what has been a very challenging year for the Orioles, Beavers and Basallo seem to have raised the morale a little bit. Beavers joined the Orioles on Saturday and went 1-for-5 in his debut as the Orioles squared off against the Houston Astros. In Sunday's finale in Houston, Basallo joined the team and has made an immediate impact so far through his first two Major League games, which include Sunday's finale in Houston and Monday's series opener at Fenway Park. Basallo is 3-for-9 with the Orioles and became the first player in franchise history to have back-to-back multi-RBI games to begin his career. And we have talked about these players at length, not just this season, but in years past. Basallo has been our number one prospect for a while. In our most recent top 50 update, Beavers was right behind him at number 2. And that comes with a trend of more national love, as Beavers has been added to several top 100 prospect lists at the national level recently. So, Bob, I will start with you here. It feels like these two players may be coming up to a team that has struggled for the course of this year, but at good times for them, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities. And we've seen in the limited sample they've been here that they are capable of making a difference.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. We needed this. I'm just going to say we needed this year for sure. I know, Nick, you said this was going to be the first full Orioles game you watched this weekend in a long time. I totally get it.
I've watched 3 straight full Orioles games for the first time since April.
Gotta love it. See, we needed this. And yeah, and look, already it seems like these are not going to be guys that get off to these really big slumps the way Colton Cowser, Kobe Mayo, Jackson Holiday did. I mean, they're going to have slumps, period. It might even be sooner rather than later, but they at least came up, had some immediate success. Dylan Beavers' first 3 games had a double, a single, 2 hits and 2 walks last night. I don't know what he's done tonight, but Basallo, just everything is advertised. Maybe this is what happens when you overcook them a little bit in AAA more than, I'm not going to say rush them to get up here, but maybe they could have been up sooner, but maybe this little arbitrary deadline thing got them a little more fully baked in the oven before they came up. But Basallo was ready. He was robbed of a home run. Would have been a cheapie, but him and Gunnar both got robbed by Jesus Sanchez in Houston. You hit the double off the wall. His bat speed's up to 85.5 miles per hour, and he's just turned 21 like a week ago. So he looks fantastic. I even thought he looked pretty good behind the plate in his first game. Trevor Rogers had a lot of good to say with him, but yeah, this is great for 2026. I think team's playing well overall. This is what you want. You want to go into the offseason with some momentum and with some of these younger guys playing a part so that you can feel good about going in, grabbing a few big pitchers maybe, and seeing what you can do next year.
Yeah, I just go back to Basallo, and like you said, these guys are going to have their struggles probably soon. They could hit a wall by the end of the year as well, because remember, they've had a very long AAA season up to this point as well. So now even though this team isn't in a playoff chase, the intensity is still ratcheted up 10 times. So we'll see what the rest of the year brings. But we've talked about this a lot already with Basallo, especially over the last 2 years, and more so over the last year, really, as he's continued to develop and look better and better. Because many years ago, when he first signed, we did not think he would become this type of player, and look who he is now. Both of these guys, is a great part of this story, is that Dylan Beavers is also not a can't-miss prospect. He was a prospect many people did not enjoy coming out of the draft. But with Basallo specifically, I hope more and more people understand that Samuel Basallo coming up and performing well has the potential to be franchise altering. Like, I just don't want to throw that out there and use that descriptor lightly. And I don't want him to feel that pressure, even though we know he does. We already know he feels enough pressure, and no one is ever going to be harder on him than how hard he is on himself. But Basallo being the first homegrown international prospect to hopefully rise to stardom at the major league level. And I know it's only been a couple of games, and I don't want to throw all of this on him, but like we've talked about this being peak Samuel Basallo and what he can become. Like it's gonna just open so many doors. Again, like we've talked about, the kids back in the DR are gonna look up to him, and they're gonna want to be the next Samuel Basallo, and they're gonna want to play for the Orioles like their hero. And I just think this entire operation, led by Kobe Perez, has done an incredible job in building up the international pipeline from a literal joke. Literally, the international program with the Orioles was a joke to the rest of the league, and now it's a threat. And Basallo could become the shining star of this. Hopefully, yeah, like you mentioned, even getting the day behind the plate with Trevor Rogers. Trevor Rogers have a real shaky outing, giving up 1 run, but gave a shout out to Basallo and his work behind the plate that day, doing it on the road in Boston. Shout out to him. Yeah, Jesus Sanchez decided to become relevant for the first time in his career. Picked a great day to do that. But still, like you saw the flash, that double off the wall, off the green monster, like he had a lot of really, really exciting at bats there in those first couple of days. I hate that he was off tonight as we're recording this. I do have to say that Beavers is playing every day, but yeah, I believe it was Ryan. Used to be O's fans probs on Twitter, I think, but I think Ryan, I can't pull up here live on there, but he had a really good tweet about Tony Mansolino saying, "Oh, hey, like we don't want to just like throw them to the wolves right here from the start," and Ryan was like, Samuel Basallo is like a robbed home run away from these monster numbers opening weekend. Like Samuel Basallo is the wolf. And I read that, I was just like, ooh, I like that. It's just exciting. You don't want to get like super jazzed up here and be like, all right, they're in. They're not going to slump. They're going to take off like rocket ships right now. But after the season that we've had to sit through these last couple of days, like I hope this continues to roll on into the offseason, because the last few days and tonight including, looks like there's winning right now. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and obviously I'd love to watch these guys in the lineup every day, and there's a reason they won't be, and the reason that they're at the bottom of the batting order, because you got to massage those at bats. Can't get more than 130. So Beavers walks more. He'll probably be in the lineup more often. I think Basallo is going to be aggressive up there. So yeah, unfortunately it's all part of the game they're playing. But I thought the most impressive at bat by Samuel Basallo this weekend was taking a Jordan Hicks 97-mile-per-hour fastball above the zone and just bam, slamming it into right center field. I mean, if you look at the plot, they were attacking him up. If you look at his weakness, so to speak, as he was coming up, it was he can't really handle velocity, especially up in the zone. Well, maybe that's because he really hadn't seen it. He saw it all game long, and then boom, no problem. I think the league is going to have a lot of trouble finding a way to attack him consistently with success. And the start of a special career right here. It's it's goosebump inducing.
Yeah, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this could be franchise altering, from Basallo's talent alone to what it will mean for the Orioles international program, which has essentially had been non-existent for decades. And we talk all the time about the benefits that Kobe Perez and his team have yielded in the minor leagues, but up to this point, we haven't really been able to see that carry over the majors, which is fair when you consider that most of these players signed at 16, and the program as it is now probably didn't really get underway until 2020, which was probably the first big class under Kobe Perez. But Basallo's arrival in the major leagues, I think, like Nick said, is really has the potential to spark a new era for this franchise, one where it's more relevant internationally, especially in the Dominican Republic. And let's face it, you've got a 21-year-old who's coming up here with a chance to make this team a lot better, not just this year, but next year, because you look up and down the Orioles lineup where they need help. Well, they could use a little bit more power. First base and DH have been kind of middling this year outside of Ryan Overn. Adley Rutschman, I have hope that we're going to see the better version of Adley Rutschman come back at some point, but I think it's clear that after years of a really high workload, there's a cost to the number of at-bats that Rutschman has had over his career so far, and the lack of true off days. And the reason that the Orioles did what they did with Rutschman over the first 2 years is because they had to do it. He was their best all-around hitter. They had to have him in the lineup. But now you add Basallo to the mix, and you've got Gunnar Henderson. You have these other players coming in. You can afford to let Adley rest a little bit more. And I think that even if the long-term plan is Adley Rutschman walks after 2027, that's still going to be really beneficial to the Orioles.
Yeah. I want to say that Sunday's lineup in Houston was by far my favorite lineup we had all season long. I think it was, let's see, Jackson Holiday, Jordan Westberg. Of course, he got hurt soon after. Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Kobe Mayo, Dylan Beavers, Samuel Basallo, whom I'm missing one. Jeremiah Jackson was in there, and there was one more that I'm not thinking of right this second, but that's okay. Jeremiah Jackson, by the way, batting .341, continuing to do what he was doing in AAA on the way up. Can't forget about him. Yeah, so it's just a fun time right now.
Yeah, and I think too, with talking about Adley, I think you're going to see Basallo, probably not this year because, like you mentioned, they got to game the system. But I do think next year you see Samuel Basallo catch a lot more than what I think people think he's going to. It's when you listen, I was listening to some fantasy stuff earlier today, and they're talking about the call-up, of course. And when you listen to the national narrative about Basallo's defense and just him as a prospect, the national media doesn't understand yet. They truly don't. The bat, they don't understand quite yet. But the defense, they're clueless. And I think you hear the other reports, like the internal reports about what these guys are, like objective internal reports. Just here's the data on the throws. Here's the data on the stuff. The defense, I think, is a lot better than what some people want to give him credit for. And he's going to continue to work on that. Again, he's only 21 years old. He just turned 21 years old. He's only caught one game at the major league level. It's why he's up now. You're going to see him catch more games this year to continue to work on some things. And I think next year you see him behind the plate a lot more than anybody is expecting. So,
yeah,
and
actually thought JJ Cooper's piece was pretty good. It was pretty even-handed. It says he's below average right now, which you would expect considering the limited amount of time he's had and his age. But he said he sees no reason why he couldn't be at least average moving forward, which, yeah, I think that's with his bat at average defense. I think that's going to be plenty good. And yeah, it's getting harder and harder to find room for Ryan Mountcastle in the 2026. I was already trying to squeeze him off, but it's getting harder and harder between Kobe Mayo, Samuel Basallo. Like, these guys need to be playing every day next year. And I think with an off season of learning from this season, what the Bash brothers, they need to be in the lineup every other day. And Colton Cowser was the other name I forgot from Sunday's lineup.
Well, and as a little teaser here, because I know that Ryan Mountcastle is a lot of Orioles fans' favorite player to debate. We have more on Ryan Mountcastle in our next episode later this week, which is going to be a mailbag show. But I'll pivot to Dylan Beavers for a moment. And Nick, I want to go back to something you touched on earlier, which is that Beavers was not a can't-miss prospect coming out of the draft at all. That is absolutely true. I remember John Mioli at his newsletter, which he had at the time, breaking down some of the immediate changes that the Orioles were making to Beaver swing, because that seemed to be the biggest weakness coming out of Cal. Was there's all these raw tools, but the swing isn't pretty. And a lot of, you go back to a lot of national reports at the time, and I don't think that there was a ton of confidence that Beavers could fix those issues in pro ball, and not only do it in a way that would allow him to be successful in the minor leagues, but that would enable him to improve the hit tool overall, tap a little bit into that raw power, and just generally improve his plate approach. Beavers, you knew that the skill set was intriguing. You knew that the tools were interesting, but it felt like the Orioles were taking a little bit of a shot in the dark, knowing what a project he was.
Yeah, I don't think it was any secret. Like, everybody knew. That's why he was picked, 33rd, 34th overall. Like, that's why he slipped, because yes, he showcased great power at Cal. He had all those loud tools you mentioned, but yeah, being able to translate that to pro ball, everyone knew was going to be a big issue. And the Orioles said they were up for the challenge. This is what I love. If he's going to come up and be able to find his role in the major leagues, like, it makes, I'm not saying there's hope for Vance Honeycutt. We're not going there. I'm just going to get ahead of that. But you look at last year's draft class that everybody was so quick to be down on. You look at this year's draft class that we're all initially so excited about, it makes me a lot more excited about a lot more hitters down lower in the farm system. If they can do what they did with Beavers, and he can be this good off the jump in the major leagues, like that's exciting about the future and the health of this organization down lower. But yeah, I felt bad all weekend because it's like Basallo. It's like Dylan Beavers is also knocking the cover off the ball here and play. He belongs. I think that's clear as day from the start. He belongs in this lineup. He belongs in the major leagues. 4 hits, 3 walks in 3 games before tonight. Like he showed down in AAA, like a lot of things like the chase rate and the swing and miss, so many things that he excelled at. Like there's going to be regression. Those numbers in the major leagues are not going to look as pretty as they did in AAA, but there's such this wide gap between where he was at in AAA and just MLB average numbers in a lot of these categories that as he settles in and even regresses a little bit, those numbers should still look pretty good. Like his ability to pull the ball in the air and do damage on those types of batted balls is consistent. These super high barrel rates. Like, yeah, he doesn't have the extreme max exit velos like Samuel Basallo does, but he gets to upper level EVs consistently. I think the power, it may not show up initially here in the big leagues as he settles in, but next year, I think it could. This is a regular, I think, 2020 guy if all goes right once he settles in. And even, I don't know if you guys saw the Eli Ben Pratt over at Baseball America. He did one of his deep dive pieces. Like, again, he included Dylan Beavers. I think it was last week. And it was just like, look at this graph. These are sliders. You see the big gold bubbles? That's Dylan Beavers doing a lot of damage against sliders. That's also exactly where pitchers are trying to throw sliders to him. And he's only whiffed 1 time against a slider in the zone right here. Oh, you want to throw a changeup against Dylan Beavers? Yeah. You better not leave it in the zone because he attacks those pitches. Leave a curveball in the zone. That's his home run money pitch. Like major league pitchers are going to have to be, of course, they're going to be so much better at being able to exploit even the smallest of holes and weaknesses in his game, and they're going to relentlessly attack him. But you zoom out and look at Beaver's entire profile, he's going to be able to adjust, I feel like, in the big leagues. Like, and even against lefties, I don't think this is a platoon bat either at all. Like, is he going to hit a home run off a lefty? Probably not, but he's going to hit for a really good average, move him down the lineup, but you're going to keep him in the lineup against lefties, I think.
Yeah, let the record show I never wanted to trade Dylan Beavers. That was all pretend. No, yeah, it's exciting. Beavers has really clicked this year, and it seems sustainable to me. It just seems like he's really found a comfortable spot with his swing. His defense looks pretty good, too. He made a nice play today in right field. I just wanted to compare his 2025 minor league season to Colton Cowser's 2023 minor league season because it's remarkably similar. Let's see, 2023, Colton Cowser batted 300 with got to run down here to get the OPS, with a 937 OPS, which is a 140 WRC plus, walked 16% of the time, struck out almost 27% of the time, and had a 220 ISO. Dylan Beavers, meanwhile, he had a 304 batting average with a 935 OPS, 152 WRC plus, 16.3% walk rate, 18.2% strikeout rate, 211 ISO. So very, very similar, except Beavers has struck out much less, and he doesn't have the power that Cowser has, just plain and simple, I don't think, at least in game. Maybe he can develop that, but he does not swing and miss as much. He's going to take his walks. He's going to hit for average. He's going to hit doubles. He's going to pop 20, 25 home runs a season, and he's going to play a solid outfield as well. So, yeah, I know everyone's down on Colton Cowser right now. I think it's a little unfair to him considering that he broke his hand in the last game of the season last year. Probably did not have much evolution in his game as he's just trying to recover coming into spring training, and then he's been hurt twice this year. But I think Colton Cowser and Dylan Beavers are going to make a fantastic corner outfield, and we just gotta find that center fielder for 2026 if it's not Cowser himself, and buy some time for Bradfield over the resurgent Vance Honeycutt. He'll always have that week a couple weeks ago. Can't take that away from him. Yeah, Dylan Beavers, don't let it be overshown. It's like Nick said, I'm excited. I mean, I'm glad that they gave them each their own day to have their moment, but it did kind of suck that Basallo vastly overshadowed him the next day. So don't forget about Beavers.
Now, I want to put this out there. We know that 130 at bat threshold is going to be looming with both of these players. Although I think in the case of Basallo, it's going to be pretty easy to keep him under that. The Orioles, at least for now, are keeping Alex Jackson on the roster. And if Adley Rutzman does not have to go on the IL with his latest injury concern, then possibly the Orioles carry 3 catchers on the roster for the rest of the season or for at least the next few weeks. And with Basallo perhaps not catching more than a day or two a week, you can probably keep him under 130 at bats easily. But how do you think the Orioles handle Beavers? Because it is tempting in a way to decide, all right, we're going to challenge him a little bit. We're going to not use him the way that a lot of Orioles prospects have been used when they come up, which is where they're in a strict platoon situation because we're trying to win games. But at the same time, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Beavers is starting to appear on more top 100 prospect lists. And it would seem like, let's say there's a scenario where Beavers finishes 135 at bats this year. It would seem like there's 5 at bats for kind of wasted when he could have been Rookie of the Year eligible next year. So how do you think the Orioles handle his playing time going forward, knowing that he is a player that should be playing a lot, but you also want to try to keep him under that at-bat threshold, perhaps?
Bring up Judd Fabian and work them both in at the same time. No, I think this organization is very clearly much higher on Dylan Beavers than the national outlets are. And so I do think, like I said, that they're going to hit that wall eventually. The adrenaline is pumping right now. Right now it's fun. You're getting their feet wet instantly, and then they're going to come home here soon and have against Houston. They got the next 4 days after the off day tomorrow. But you're going to get this series against Houston. They're going to give them their time here at home in Baltimore to get used to the crowd and say hello to the crowds, the home crowds. But then I think they're going to back off a little bit. You're going to give them a couple more days off here and there and work some more guys in because I don't at this point. You're going to wait to bring them up. I don't think they're going to jeopardize that next year Rookie of the Year potential at this point. Otherwise, they would have brought him up, a couple of weeks before. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, Dylan Beavers is not yet qualified for that PPI for the Rookie of the Year if he does win it next year. But the new list for Pipeline came out. He wasn't on it. Baseball America, he was 83rd. And ESPN has yet to update their top 100, but they did update the personal list for the teams. And Beavers went from our 5th rated prospect to number 2. That tells me he probably will be on that top 100 and therefore be qualified. So unless he goes over his next 100, he'll probably be qualified for that going into next year. Yeah, I think he's going to walk enough where he can be in a little bit more often. Maybe tough lefty starters. You leave him on the bench. Like I said, I think Basallo is a little more aggressive hitter. So I don't think they can count on the walks to keep the at-bat because it's at-bats and not plate appearances that go towards it. All I know is they both better be in the lineup Saturday night when I am at the game with the fellow patrons in a suite we all rented out. So yeah, looking forward to that. And there's 2 tickets available if anyone wants to become a patron and buy one of those seats. But yeah, I think Beavers, he's going to play mostly every day, right field, left field. And, tough lefties, give him a day off. Maybe he can come in pinch hit later in games if room provides.
With that, now we will head into our final segment of the show. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And when the Orioles do come back into town later this weekend, be sure to head to the ballpark and check out the beer stand behind home plate where you can get one of the Checker Spot's signature beers, The Bird is the Word. And now we'll do our usual shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 prospects list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or just something interesting, their stat line that we want to note. And I'll start with Nick here because he has 2 guys that coming into this year that were seen as breakout candidates, but for various reasons have maybe slipped off the radar a little bit. However, both of those players deserving of being in the segment this week.
Yeah, last week was a great week. From top to bottom, a fantastic week. And there's so much information. We put out the weekly recap episode on the main feed. So if you haven't listened to that, please go check that out as well for more minor league talk. But my hitter, I went Tavian Josenberger. He hit 333 last week's 5 games, had a double, home run, 2 stolen bases, 7 walks to 1 strikeout. And then I think tonight, right, the Bay Sox have already wrapped up tonight. I think he had another 2 hits and a walk, or a walk and a hit and a stolen base. He had another really good night at the plate as well to add to that. So he's continuing a good trend there. Hasn't developed into the player I think we were hoping for up to this point, but he's also had a few IL stints this year. So I also put an article up on Substack on Monday looking at a few possible Arizona Fall League options, and I included Josenberger in there. I think that makes a lot of sense, that he could potentially go out west in a couple of weeks after the season ends. So I mean, we talked about how intriguing he was because that power, he moves to the SEC his last year at college, and the power shined. The defense in center field shines. He's played a lot of second base here as well. So I am still intrigued, at least, by Josenberger and his potential. I think this year was just an injury-riddled year, and we'll see what happens next year. But next year is definitely going to be a big year, a critical year. And pitchers, Chase also, we might have some life here. He dropped a lot in our rankings this year. We've talked a few times about his troubles and why he's dropped so far in our rankings this year. But this past week, he went 5 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts. And over his last 2 starts, he's allowed 0 earned runs. That's 9 total innings, 3 hits, 5 walks, 18 strikeouts. In the month of June, he pitched 19 innings. He walked 17 batters. In 29 innings since the beginning of July, he's walked 16. So the walk rate is looking much better. 2 really good outings. I think they were both relief, although I think the last outing actually might have been a start. I can't remember. One of them was a long relief outing. One was a start. Either way, 2 really good outings here. Like I said on Monday's show, I'm not jumping up and down with joy quite yet. He's going to have 3 more outings this year. I believe there's only 3 weeks left, so 3 more outings. Hopefully all 3 of those are good outings, and he can string together a good stretch here, final month of the year, to close out the year and enter 2026 with a little bit of optimism. But there might be some life here with Alsop, which is really good to see, considering all the hype that was being generated about him coming into the year.
Yeah, I wonder if Chase Alsop could be our Levi Wells equivalent, maybe going into this. I was actually between Tavian Josenberger and the guy I picked for my hitter. I'm still weirdly bullish on Tavian Josenberger because, man, he's a lefty with that kind of speed, a great walk rate, doesn't strike out a ton, definitely more so this year than last, but a 228 BABIP. Last year he had a 257 BABIP in high A. He should be running higher BABIPs, and that's going to do a lot of work to get his numbers looking more normal. I think Arizona Fall League would be perfect place for him and Enrique Bradfield to team up. But I did go with Braylon Tavera of the Delmarva Shorebirds, only because he's 20 years old. You look at his numbers, he's batting 213, 660 OPS. You're like, oh man, is this another Michael Hernandez who hasn't quite worked out from the international front? I'm not so sure. I think you got to look at a little deeper when it comes to Delmarva, and even Aberdeen, the WRC plus. He still has a 104 WRC plus, and I believe he has a triple tonight, which should only make that go up. He's walking 13.4% of the time. He is striking out more, 31.6, but ISO's up from 40 last year to 111. So slowly starting to tap into that. It's not like it's a breakout season or anything, but it's at least signs of life, and he's still very young. So I think he's probably going to start back in Delmarva to begin 2026, but I think that's when you could potentially see a breakout if it's going to happen. And my pitcher is going to be Michael Caldone, who I used to say Blake Money was the most underrated pitcher in the organization. I think Michael Caldone might be starting to take over that mantle, and I'm including myself in this. But on the year for Low A Delmarva, he pitched 62 1/3 innings, had a 2.31 ERA, 3.24 FIP, struck out 26.5% of batters, and walked 10.5. And then he just recently got promoted to high A Aberdeen. In his first outing there, he pitched 3 1/3 innings, gave up 4 hits, 1 unearned run, walked 1 batter, struck out 3. So, yeah, just 22 years old, be 23 in October, probably start back at Aberdeen in 2026. But I think maybe he's a guy that, from a small school, Felician, right, university, whatever, maybe this is a guy they can tinker with in the offseason to make him pop even more next season.
Good choices. I'm going to start my hitter. And if you want to talk about someone from the 2024 draft class that has given us a little bit more reason for hope recently, it's been Griff O'Farrell. Dating back to July 13th, O'Farrell has been riding a 25-game on-base streak. In that span, he's hit 305 with a 402 on-base percentage, thanks in no small part to his 16 walks compared to just 11 strikeouts. I think that when you look at O'Farrell's season, both in this recent hot streak and the whole year dating back to the beginning of the season, we can see what the problem is for O'Farrell. He has very good walk to strikeout numbers, but he just doesn't hit the ball all that hard. And even in this recent on-base stretch, we're only looking at a total of 6 extra bases, all of them doubles. But the reason that I'm a little bit optimistic right now is that A, he seems to be ending the year on a high note, and B, we know that Aberdeen hitters are not going to hit out a lot of power there. O'Farrell's WRC plus right now is at 97, which, given his struggles earlier this season, I think the fact that he's gotten it up there is a pretty good sign. And honestly, I hope that the Orioles challenge him a little bit and have him finish the season at Chesapeake, not just to see, can he pad the power and the numbers a little bit with more power with a move up to a better ballpark. But maybe what we're starting to see now is that because of O'Farrell's plate approach and his good bat-to-ball skills, he was able to overcome some bad luck early in the year and really start to break out in a meaningful way. I think it's clear that we know what he has to work on and what he has to do to get better. But the fact that he's been able to rebound from a really, really tough first few months of this season has certainly been encouraging. And my pitcher, I'm shouting out Carter Baumler this week. Congratulations to him for the move up to Double-A Chesapeake. Baumler, a 5th-round pick back in 2020. The Orioles went over slot to get out of Dowling Catholic High School in Iowa, has struggled with injuries over the course of his career. He missed 2021 because of Tommy John surgery, so he didn't make his professional debut until 2022 and was injured off and on for the last few years. And coming into this season, had just 51 minor league innings under his belt. He's been able this year to throw 32, 29 a third of which have been at Aberdeen. And with the Ironbirds, he put up very good numbers, including a 2.45 ERA and 38 strikeouts to go against 13 walks. Now, at this point, Baumler is a pure relief prospect. It's pretty clear the Orioles are developing him as such. He's pitched out of the bullpen exclusively this year, mostly in the form of short outings. But if you're looking for a relief prospect who could be a bit of a late bloomer, in this case because of injuries, Baumler's your guy. And as we're going to talk about a little bit on our next episode, there are some interesting Rule 5 considerations with Baumler, given that he is Rule 5 eligible after this season and seemingly is among the many relief-type prospects that are making a strong case for the 40-man. And I don't know that a couple months ago we would have put Baumler in this category, but we've seen what a healthy Carter Baumler is capable of, even after all of the injuries that he's had in the course of his career. And it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, like we're going to talk about him some more in the next episode, but yeah, he looks bigger, stronger, just free out there. And it is truly lethal stuff. He's back pumping 97, 98 with curveballs that are almost virtually unhittable. So yeah, I think we are going to have a fun conversation here in a couple of minutes about Baumler.
He is the Hunter Harvey equivalent, where he couldn't stay healthy as a starter, convert to reliever, and let's get him up as quick as possible.
And for that does it for this episode. We will be back later on this week to answer your questions as part of our latest mailbag episode. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Twitch, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Substack. We're there at oriolesontheverge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up today. Become a member of our Patreon community. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, what do those weekly episodes sound like? You can actually listen to the most recent episode for patrons on our main feed. So check that out. Nick did a very good job recapping the past week of Orioles action. And if you like what you hear, Subscribe to Patreon for as little as $3 a month, and you can get those updates every week. And of course, when the off season rolls around, we'll come up with ways to generate more exclusive content for our patrons. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zack Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zack Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we take your questions as part of our latest Mailbag episode. And this episode is going to cover a very broad range of topics from the majors all the way down to the minors. And it's also worth noting that this is the first Mailbag episode we have done since the trade deadline. So an opportunity to dive into a lot of new topics that we haven't necessarily been able to cover on previous Mailbag episodes. And of course, some room for some of Birdland's favorite debates. So we got a broad range of questions from our listeners. Most of these came from our Patreon community, but we did have a few others come in through social media. So thank you, as always, for the great questions. And I'm going to dive into this one here from Discord. It comes from Daddy Batty, who wants to know, where do you see Brandon Young next year? Bottom of the rotation or bullpen? What does he need to work on over the offseason? Bob, I know you had an answer to this question when it was asked in our Discord. So I want to go back to you because this was a few weeks ago now. Do you still feel the way that you felt at the time? And if so, can you elaborate for our listeners what you think Brandon Young could be working on to stick in the rotation?
Could you remind me what I said back then? No, first of all, fantastic outing in Houston. Carried a perfect game into 7 2/3 innings pitched. I told my family, I kept saying, you're going to want to watch this game. They kept asking me, why? What's so special about it? I'm like, I can't tell you, but just watch it. It might be nice. And then, of course, it didn't happen, but fantastic outing nonetheless. And I think you kind of saw what I am vaguely remembering me getting out before, is that I think Brandon Young was a good slider away from being like a mid to back of the rotation starter. And what do you know? I just got lucky here. Also, Tommy Carr made a similar observation in the Discord, so I don't really deserve that much credit. But the cutter went from more of a Dean Kramerish cutter to a little more slide action to it. And what do you know? He almost pitches a perfect game. I do think ideally this offseason is huge. We want the Orioles to get at least one mid to upper rotation starter, clearly, maybe two. I think ideally your top five are Bradish, two new acquisitions, Trevor Rogers, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer. Like, that's your top ideally, but you need guys like Cade Povich, Brandon Young, be a AAA on a moment's notice, and maybe Povich's last option year, and Brandon Young fully capable to step in and be a mid to back end rotation starter. Because I think that Brandon Young could basically be a better version of Dean Kramer, which is pretty good. At least a similar version to Dean Kramer, a guy who can go out there, give you innings in the middle to back of a rotation, and have some fantastic outings, have some outings where he's just trying to eat the innings and hang in there. But yeah, I'm still very bullish on Brandon Young. I think a lot of people want to move him to the bullpen. A lot of people that I've seen just don't believe in him. First 10 starts of a major league career, don't even worry about it. Like, they're just figuring stuff out at the major league level. And clearly his 11th start, he almost pitched a perfect game. So yeah, Brandon Young, I am still a fan. I back into the rotation starter ultimately.
Yeah, like I think that's where he's going to enter 2026, right where we all kind of figured he would be as a pro, like battling for that 4 or 5 spot in the rotation. I was all in on Brandon Young from the day they signed him, but as someone, like, we should pay attention to him. And last year, to me, was confirmation that he's a major leaguer. What role, we'll see. But last year, I was like, this guy belongs in the big leagues, and now he's here and he's showing everybody why. Yeah, that start in Houston, as great as it was, it didn't change anything for me. It was memorable, and even better that he got to do it in front of like friends and family back home in Texas. And I saw the quotes coming out about him saying like he felt like every time he was going out on the mound, he was letting the entire team down. And so, like, that performance was weighing on him those first few starts. And then now to go back home in front of friends and family, I imagine that pressure was ramped up even more. Like that, he said he grew up going to Astros games. And so now he's having to do this against the Astros in front of mom, dad, everyone he's played Little League with, and he shoved. He absolutely shoved. And so that proves to me that like he can do this. He can stick. And so I think he's going to be firmly in the competition there for the back end rotation side. If he gets squeezed out, he gets squeezed out. Great. That means we brought in better pitchers and other guys have stepped up, but he's going to be firmly in the mix there. I expect him to be in the 4 or 5 spot next year. We'll see how the rest of this year goes and what he can do the rest of the way. But yeah, if he's got, new pitchers in the mix and they're tinkering, this is a perfect opportunity to tinker in the big leagues and figure it out. Like he just turned 27 years old on Tuesday. So he has had 2 Tommy Johns. So, you don't know how long all this is going to last, but like, he does need to step up like now. He's getting the opportunity to settle in. It is going to be a big offseason, like you mentioned, both with who this organization hopefully brings in and in terms of his own development. So I'm not ready to throw him in the bullpen role yet. I don't think he needs to go there, but he does need, this is going to be a critical offseason for him as well, because he is going to have to come up and come out strong next year in spring training and command one of those last couple spots in the rotation. But I think this outing against Houston and what we've seen, the track record coming into this year, I think he's proven that he is capable of achieving that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, good or bad, I don't know there's going to be a whole lot that changes my mind about Brandon Young down the stretch here. I agree with you guys that I think he's probably firmly in the mix to be your 5th or 6th starter next year, possibly less if the Orioles hopefully go out and add pitching this offseason and those pitchers stay healthy, because as we saw this past spring training, that's not always a guarantee. But if there's a scenario next year where you come into the season and Brandon Young is your number 5, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think we've seen in stretches this year where the ceiling is not astronomically high, but he's also much better than he is at his worst or even in his kind of middling outings. And I agree with Bob. I don't think that him possibly being a better version of Dean Kramer is all that far off, especially if he's able to improve his pitch mix, which I think is going to be a big area of focus this offseason. The cutter is a pitch he's relied on a lot in the past. It hasn't necessarily been successful against major league hitters. If the slider is the alternative to that, and that's what's going to allow him to be successful, then I think that's what you work on over the course of this offseason and figure out, okay, that's going to make him a better big leaguer regardless. Now, whether or not that comes in the form of a number 5 starter or a long man out of the bullpen, which the Orioles could really use next year, it's going to help you either way.
Let's go down to the farm and talk about Carter Baumler, who we hinted at in the last episode. Question from KTGTEEV. What do you do with Carter Baumler? You have to protect him, right? The way he's pitching right now, I feel like he'll get plucked in the Rule 5 draft, and I would hate to lose him, especially with him being healthy right now. So it's early. I always look forward to the full episode we do, looking at all the Rule 5 eligible guys. But here in August, where do we stand on Carter Baumler? What do we think happens with him?
I thought for sure they were going to keep him in Aberdeen all season long to kind of try to hide him in the Rule 5 draft. And since he's just got promoted to AA, I'm starting to think maybe that's not going to be the case. Maybe he will be added to the 40-man roster. It's going to be a really tough offseason for this, because I think the Orioles could have up to 15, 16 40-man spots open once the season ends, and guys need to or get DFA'd and become free agents, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how much room there is. There's a lot of good questions, but I think Carter Baumler is making a good case for himself. He got the promotion after having a, what is the ERA here? 2.45 ERA over 29 and a third innings, striking out 32.5% of batters, walking 11%. That's a pretty good delta there. 21.4% K to walk ratio, 2.27 FIP, a 184 batting average against, with a 292 BABIP. So it's not like it was luck there, keeping the opponent's batting average under 200. 23 years old, looking as healthy as he ever has. Big, powerful righty. And I know I keep harping on this, but potential organizational philosophy change when it comes to relief pitchers, prospects. Yeah, I'm starting to lean towards he might be added.
As I started to think about this earlier, I went back to when Cody Sedlock was eligible for the Rule 5 draft years ago after a bit of a resurgence that's similar to what we've seen from Carter Baumler. He was not protected and ultimately was not chosen in that Rule 5 draft. This was back in 2019. And there's a couple of key differences that I see in the two scenarios, which is that one, Sedlock was a little bit older than Baumler is now, and the other is that Sedlock had been drafted by Dan Duquette. Mike Elias is left to make that decision in 2019 about whether or not to protect Sedlock, and didn't. In the case of Baumler, though, Mike Elias was the Orioles general manager when they drafted him, although Brad Selick has moved on. There's still a lot of other key people in this organization who were around at the time that Baumler was drafted. So I think if they feel like there's a hint of the potential that drew them to him as a pitcher in the first place, and that his injury troubles are behind him, that they probably will protect him. Now, with that said, one caveat I would add to that is that there are a lot of pure relief arms that you're going to have to make a decision about this offseason. The Orioles added to that at the trade deadline by going out and getting Cameron Foster, Ramon Gomez, and Anthony Nunez from the Mets. Foster in the Soto trade and Gomez and Nunez in the Cedric Mullins deal. All three of those guys were Rule 5 eligible this offseason. I think of those three, Nunez has the strongest case to be protected, but Foster is in AAA, flashing pretty good stuff. And Gomez, performance-wise, doesn't deserve a 40-man spot. But when you have a guy that throws over 100 miles per hour regularly, you've got to take a long, hard look at whether or not you want to try to hold on to him, knowing that another team could take that opportunity to pluck him from your organization for essentially nothing. So there are a lot of pitchers who fall into that reliever bucket that are eligible this offseason. But I think Baumler's track record with this organization gives him a little bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, bring up the name Gomez. I feel like he's got to be frustrated in the front office because you wanted to get a look at him now. Maybe he's an Arizona Fall League candidate to go out, so you can get a look at him. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just becoming Debbie Downer on this Rule 5 stuff. I just don't think you need to protect him. And I also think just kind of the rush to be like, we got to protect this guy happens a little too quickly just because I don't know. It doesn't seem like, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know for a while that was trending now, like fewer and fewer Rule 5 picks. It's a lot to consider, I think. And it's the minor league phase that I'm most concerned about. You saw this organization get rated last year. Like, you're not losing sleep over, having Elio Prado plucked, but like that's good depth that you have to replace. And Zack Peak and Gene Pinto are healthy and pitching well this year. That good for them, but it sucks to see as an Orioles fan who followed them for much of their young careers. That's the phase that I'm concerned about. I'm holding my breath with. With the major league phase, I just don't think not as much. Baumler looks great. I said this just a little bit ago. Like he doesn't look like the Carter Baumler who opened his eyes in 2021 when he made his debut. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more poised. It's 97, 98. The breaking stuff is there. I'm like giggling as I'm watching this guy throw 2-strike curveballs to guys. Stuff-wise, I think he's worth targeting in the Rule 5 draft. But I just don't know. I think if you're a major league team, how many major league teams aren't going to give him a look because of the injury history? Like, he's got to stay at the major league level all year. Yeah, you can finagle the roster stuff a little bit, but like I just think it's too much of a risk that most teams pass. But I do agree that if the Orioles think there's even a hint of he could go, and if they're super pleased with where he's at now, then I could see them protecting him. But I just don't think they're going to need to this offseason. But
it's fair. I do think if you're going to play the injured list game and finagle things with a Rule 5 pick, Carter Baumler's a pretty good candidate to be able to do that with. But all right, let's go to one from Ben DeWurst. Ceiling, floor, and most likely for Dylan Beavers in his major league career, I'm supposing. Let's go to Zack.
So I'll start with the ceiling. I agree with what Nick said in our last episode. 2020 player in his best seasons. He's more than capable. That I think the speed is actually a very underrated part of his game that doesn't get talked about enough. That hopefully we'll see flashes of in the major leagues. And on defense, I put him a few notches below Colton Cowser because I wouldn't run Beavers out there in center field, but I think he can be at least a capable right fielder in the big leagues, especially in the short right field at Camden Yards. So maybe not a multi-time All-Star, especially for a right fielder, because he doesn't have that 30 to 40 home run power that you look for in top-tier right fielders. But I think he could be a really solid everyday right fielder, not just a platoon bat, an everyday right fielder who in his best season is going to give you 20 production with a 10 to 12% walk rate, strikeout rate probably in the low 20s. And those are really good numbers year in and year out. The floor, probably an up and down fourth outfielder, someone who will stick around for a long time because he can hit high level minor league pitching and will have flashes of success in the major leagues. He's not a pure platoon hitter necessarily. He actually hit lefties very well this year, but if he struggles in the major leagues, it's going to be easy for him to be put in that bucket. So next thing you know, if he just doesn't really wow anybody, he's good organizational depth. You keep him around, and as he gets older, you put him at first base a little bit more, but he never really establishes himself as a consistent long-term major leaguer. He ends up becoming more of an up and down guy. That's, I think, his floor at this point. The middle ground, solid platoon bat with 15 homer potential most seasons, still room for 20 steals. You don't run him out there a whole lot against lefties, but can still hit righties. That's, strong side platoon player. That's still pretty valuable. So, yeah, there's a high range between my floor and my ceiling for Beavers, but I feel like the ceiling and the middle ground, there's not that much of a gap, and both are pretty good outcomes.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I just see him being peak Beavers being a regular 2020 guy. And even if he's just a 2 to 3 WAR player every year, and maybe the home runs never super spike, maybe the stolen bases, he tampers down on them a little bit and they don't run him as wild. Maybe he strikes out a little bit more here in the major leagues, and the defense is fine, nothing spectacular. If he's still going to be an everyday 2 to 3 WAR player, maybe sometimes can spike to a 4 or 5 WAR player, I'm perfectly content there if Beavers can do that. Like, I'm not expecting future multi-time all-star here or anything like that. I'm just expecting like a very overall solid, above average major league regular. And that it's considering where he was, like we talked about on draft day, and following his journey from start to where he is now, like that's a massive win for him and player development.
Yeah, I think his floor is obviously, I mean, any player that's just breaking into the majors, floor is just a couple of years in the majors, can't quite put it all together and is out of the league. Ceiling is probably Kyle Tucker light. I actually will look at his 2023 combined minor league stats, and I think this is a pretty good view of what his ceiling in the majors could be. That's where he split time between high A and double A. As a 21-year-old, he batted .288 with an .850 OPS, 13% walk rate, 22% strikeout rate, 180 ISO, 131 WRC plus. He had 27 steals and 11 home runs. I'd probably push the home runs up a little bit, maybe steals down a little bit. Ceiling like 25 homers, 25 steals per year, playing really solid corner outfield defense. And I think maybe the most realistic is a Nick Markakis type of player, especially from like his Atlanta days later on in his career, where he's batting between 270, 280, OPSing between 740 and 800, walking around 10% of the time, striking out up to 16% of the time. I think that's pretty realistic as long as he continues to do what he's doing. So yeah, I like having him around for the next 6 years or so.
Bob, I'm glad you brought up Markakis because for a lot of Orioles fans, especially younger Orioles fans, that's the gold standard of a homegrown right fielder. And if you're hearing the WAR totals that we just mentioned and think, well, that's a little bit underwhelming, consider this. Markakis, during his time with the Orioles, peaked at 6.1 FWAR in 2008. He had an incredible season that year. After that, 2009, 2.1 WAR, followed by 2.4 in 2010, 1.5 in 2011. 2012 only appeared in 104 games, had a 2-win season. Followed up was only a half win in 2023, and then 2.3 in his final year with the Orioles. And then essentially every year in Atlanta, he was a half win to full win player, peaking at 2.5. So Nick Markakis, I think we would all agree, had an objectively good major league career. And that's where WAR put him most seasons.
Yep. Great name, too. Love the name.
Go now to this question from David, which came through on Twitter. Which deadline acquisitions are standing out the most to each of you, either in a good or bad way? I'll start with Nick here.
I'm going to say Jerron Watts-Brown for me. Even if only 5 people pay attention to this, I need those 5 people to know this. That ignore the MLB.com player page screenshot bros. Because the ERA isn't pretty for Jerron Watts-Brown. And once he came over from Toronto, right, it was kind of borderline, right? Is he a starter? The breaking stuff is high quality stuff, but like the fastball should play so much better than it does. It's like plus IVB numbers, it's massive extension. Can the Orioles unlock a little bit more with the fastball, show better control and command, and can he become a starter? Or are we looking at a potential reliever ceiling here with Watts-Brown? Like there are people on both sides, and we'll see where he lands over the next year or so. But since joining the organization, 14 innings in AA. I don't care about the ERA. I see a 33% home run to fly ball rate and a 52% overall fly ball rate, which are not sustainable. This is a wild small sample variance in a very home run friendly ballpark in Bowie. But what's important, I see a 34% strikeout rate with a 6.8% walk rate, a 55% contact rate, which is very low, and a 21% swinging strike rate right now with a 37% call strike plus whiff percentage. He's getting a ton of whiffs. I like the outings that I've been able to watch him pitch. And the Orioles haven't really had the opportunity to put their hands on him yet and tweak what they want to tweak. So I've been very impressed with Jerron Watts-Brown since the trade.
I have to say, oh my gosh, I've seen things to like about everybody except maybe Victor Figueroa, if I'm putting him at the bottom, but he's also just a big slugger. So if he mashes for a week, I'll probably change my mind. But other than that, I guess I would say, I know he didn't have the best start tonight, but Wellington Arcena, I just think the arm talent is ridiculous. He's still very young, doesn't have to be added to the 40-man until after next season. So I just like the upside play there. I know Bateman is another one. Wilfred De La Cruz has been as advertised over here. But Brandon Butterworth, if you want to go with just surprising, like didn't know he was. I mean, the numbers look good, but just watching him, it kind of he's a fun little player to have in the upper levels of the farm system. But I guess I would say Arcena is the one impressing, and Victor Figueroa is the one that is not.
I feel like there's been a few guys that have stood out. Brandon Butterworth has played really well. I've seen some things I like in Cobb Hightower. And if you want to look at some of the relief prospects that came over, ignore the AAA ERAs for Cameron Foster and Anthony Nunez. Both of those guys have really good stuff. And when you're looking at pitchers especially, things are going to be skewed by a small sample size. But I really like what I've seen in the limited opportunities we've had from Boston Bateman. This is one of those players that I thought when the deal happened with San Diego that the pure numbers didn't really tell the whole story because he was in such a hitter-friendly environment out in Lake Elsinore that it was going to always look a little more unimpressive than it actually was. I just think his mound presence and his stuff, from what I saw in his 2 starts with Delmarva, are really advanced for someone his age. And while there might not be a pitch just yet that jumps out at you as a plus offering, something you can build a whole arsenal around, the bottom line is that he's only 19 and he's got a starter's pitch mix. He's going up to high A now, has a chance to finish out this year there, and will likely start back there next year as a 20-year-old. So I really like what I see from Bradfield, or excuse me, Bateman so far.
Love all of these guys. Let's go. Steve has a couple of questions here on Twitter. And his first one a couple of days ago, he wanted to know our thoughts on Jeremiah Jackson and his role moving forward. What are we thinking about Jeremiah Jackson now that we've seen him in the big leagues for the last couple of weeks?
Pretty ironic timing as he's pinch hitting in the top of the 10th to try to get the Orioles to lead back in extra innings as of time of recording Tuesday night. I like what I've seen. I think it's pretty much as advertised. He is a exit velocity merchant, as I've seen it be put online. I think it was Dan Sanchez. Hits the ball hard, hits the ball often, does not walk. Striking out more in the majors as expected than he was in the minor leagues this year. But I think as he gets adjusted, like everybody has to, I think that will improve itself too. So, yeah, I think he's the perfect Ramon Arias replacement for a bench player moving forward. Well, at least he's under his team control years. He's got all 3 options. Well, he'll have 2 after this year. So, yeah, just a great guy to have in this organization. I think he's going to stick around for a while. Currently batting .341. That'll go down, but I think he's going to be a guy that hits for power, hits for a decent average, and can play solid defense. I know they're like refusing to play him anywhere other than the outfield right now for some reason, even though he's pretty decent infielder. But yeah, I'm a fan of him.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get more opportunities in the infield. My feeling on Jackson is that regardless of what he does, good or bad, here over the final month or so, run him out there as much as possible, because I want to know if the Orioles have somebody that they can turn to in 2026, because you are, probably going to need to pursue another infielder this offseason to fill the spot that Ramon Arias took, unless you come away thinking that Jackson is a guy that you can put in that spot next year. I really like what he does in terms of his exit velocities. I think he's got a lot of athleticism, and hopefully he's able to show that off in the infield. The fact that he doesn't walk very much concerns me a bit, especially if we're looking at whether or not what he's done throughout the course of this season, not just in this limited sample in the majors, is sustainable. But how many low walk, high contact utility guys stick around in baseball? I know it's just kind of a generic question, but I feel like there's a lot of them. So maybe not being exposed as an everyday player, Jackson can get away with that a little bit.
Yeah, I think right now he can stay. Like this is Mike Montville, Norfolk State coach. Shout out to you, sir. Shout out to whoever was instrumental in his development this year, because I hand up paid no attention to Jeremiah Jackson when they signed him. I thought like this, it's a former top prospect who didn't pan out. Now it's a minor league signing. And what do we talk about all year? There's no upper level infield depth in this organization. So he's going to go to fill that void. He's the bridge to Aaron Estrada, Griffo Farrell, and some other guys. Honestly, so when I'm doing my game watches, when he was down in Bowie, I'm hitting the fast forward button. I was not watching Jeremiah Jackson at bats. I thought he's just minor league fodder. And then he went to AAA and everything changed. And now he's in the big leagues, and I'm tuned in to his at bats to see what he can do. If you don't like the walk and strikeout numbers, I don't think they're going to change. Even with some development next year, settling in and coming back next year with a known defined role and knowing he's going to be in the big leagues, I don't think those numbers are going to change. But yeah, like Zach said, I don't think they really need to serve his purpose. So yeah, I would not be mad at all if Jeremiah Jackson is the Ramon Arias next year.
Yeah, I gotta say I was very similar when it comes to Jeremiah Jackson signing, and then I thought he was going to be a AAA Norfolk. He goes all the way down to AA Chesapeake, and on I keep a stat list that I update as much as I can daily, updating interesting prospects stats throughout the year. I did not add Jeremiah Jackson at all to that until he was in AAA. So yeah, big fail by me. But next question from Steve is thoughts on Andy Fabian. Let's go right back to Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just touched on him the other day. I think Zack or somebody had him as the shout out. But yeah, like this big guy, 6'4", he's 22 already. He turned 23 in January. But as we mentioned, he was one of those late signings with some leftover international funds. He's in Delmarva now. You look at those numbers. I did not realize the numbers were as good as they have been. A 70% ground ball rate in Delmarva, 45% strikeout rate, and an 0.95 average against. Not saying those numbers are going to continue, but yeah, he was just a guy who I know caught my eye last year in the DSL in writing up some articles for Keeler Morphe and some other guys in the DSL, and you see Fabian and this big curveball and good velo and just a massive human being, and he became interesting. And those numbers in Delmarva this year make him even more interesting. So I think we'll see next year. I think it's going to be the more defining year for Fabian. If he's in Norfolk by the end of next year, then it's like, yeah, pay attention.
It's been telling to me that the Orioles are using him out of the bullpen more this year because, as you just mentioned, Nick, he is a little bit older, probably a 2 or 3 pitch pitcher. So I think moving him to the bullpen makes sense. But with the move to a more permanent relief role, we have seen a velo uptick with Fabian. He still has a really good curveball. And what's interesting is that I think I had the weekly over at Patreon when Fabian was promoted from the FCL to Delmarva. And one of the things that I questioned at the time was, where are the ground balls? Yeah, he had such a high ground ball rate in the DSL last year. It was down at 40% in the FCL this year. At Delmarva, they've skyrocketed, like you just said, to 70%. I have no clue what is behind that. I don't know if it's a statistical fluke that he wasn't generating a lot of ground balls in the FCL, or he's generating way more than you expect in Delmarva. I don't know if there's maybe been some adjustments to his pitch mix or to his mechanics. I'm not sure what it is. But if Andy Fabian ground ball artist is a thing, someone who can throw 93 to 95 from the left side with a good curveball and can generate a lot of ground balls is a pretty interesting prospect, even if it is in the pure relief mold. I do think that next year is going to be a big test for him, but if he's able to go to high A Frederick, get off to a good start there, and at least puts his way up to AA, maybe even AAA by the end of the year, I think we're going to be talking about him a lot more.
Yeah, I have to also agree. I'm a fan of Andy Fabian, especially in a pure relief role. I think it just lets the stuff play up, and I think he's a guy that, Keith Law thinks it's a negative, his delivery. I think it is a positive, especially out of the bullpen, just a unique look. It's a guy striking out guys, getting ground balls. I think, 45% strikeout rate in Delmarva so far. So even though he's walking 14.3% of batters, K to walk ratio is 30.6%. Fantastic. Batters are hitting under 100 against him, FIP of 1.72. Yeah, I love this. This is what the international program on the pitching side is about. It's just finding these under the radar guys that you can coach up and get a little bit extra out of. So I'm a fan.
Yeah. That entire discussion was way too much. All we had to say was Keith Law saw him throw one pitch and said he sucks. So AKA he's worth paying attention to.
Just a guy.
Go to this question now from Peter. Which major league and minor league players do you see as untouchable for trades this offseason? And Bob, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, that's interesting. Major league's going to be easier. Untouchable, Rutschman, Mayo, Holiday, Westberg, Henderson, Beavers. Now that he's part of the plans, Cowser, Basallo, like basically all the young core, I think, are untouchable. I don't think you're trading anyone from the rotation or the bullpen, except maybe Dean Kramer. I think maybe you could, if a team likes him, And you do get 2 other outside guys, and you still want to leave room for a Povich or a Brandon Young to potentially slide in there, or Trey Gibson. Maybe you could trade him. I don't know. But on the minor league side, that's where we get a little interesting here. Untouchable is a strong word. I don't know about untouchable. The guys I would be very wary of trading away right now would be Trey Gibson, Michael Ferret, and Nate George. I think those 3 and probably your top 4 picks from the draft, I don't see them going anywhere. Anyone under that, I feel like could be had. Even like Esteban Mejia, I could see him headlining a big trade potentially, even if I don't want to, as he has a lot of upside. But to get, you have to be able to give. Yeah, it's going to be tough. These trades, I love so much of our guys right now, and we're so deep. We're going to lose some. It's just inevitable. But yeah, I think untouchable or close to untouchable, it's Gibson, Ferret, and George for me.
I think I agree. Yeah, for me, it's I want, obviously, if you're getting a proven starter with multiple years of control, I'm not going to say no if Trey Gibson or Ferret or somebody has to be included in a deal. It's make it hurt. It's going to hurt. It's going to happen. And do it, please. Make this major league team capable of winning a World Series. But if I had to choose, I would say for me, it's probably Gibson and Ferret. Just the strides they made this year are continue to go underappreciated. And I think Trey Gibson is going to be in the major leagues by the end of next year. And honestly, if Michael Ferret stays healthy and can rebound from the back issue that he had this year, I think Michael Ferret could also be pushing for that at the end of next year as well. If he has if he continues to pitch as well as he did this year. So yeah, I think those 2 guys for me. But
actually, okay,
I'll just say anyone is honestly at this point, other than Basallo, who's now in the major leagues. Anyone else, I'm down.
Yeah, sorry, Zach. I had a bold prediction. I thought I could just, before I forget, Trey Gibson, I believe, is going to be PPI eligible in 2026. I think he's going to sneak his way onto 2 out of 3 top 100 lists, and I predict he's in the majors before to be eligible for the Rookie of the Year. If it's not right out of spring training, then it's like the Grayson Rodriguez, Jackson Holiday, where it's like a week or 2 into the season, gets called up, maybe out of the bullpen to start. But let's have 3 Orioles eligible for that draft pick.
Interesting call there. I definitely agree with you guys that I don't see the Orioles moving Gibson because he's the kind of prospect that they have needed for a while, which is someone that they can stash at AAA, let him develop, and where the stuff is playing up. I mean, it's only taken 2 outings at AAA for national outlets to start talking about Trey Gibson a lot more, and it's because we have access to the data now. We can see just how good his pitch mix is. So unless Gibson is the guy that gets you back a starter with 2 or 3 years of team control that you can slot into the top of your rotation, I don't see the Orioles moving from him at all. And I still believe that Michael Ferret might have the higher ceiling of the 2 guys. There's been more of a question mark with him this year because of the back issues, but he's pitched really well. He's a couple years younger. I think that he's got room to get even better than he has. And yeah, I agree with Nate George. A prospect like that, you always run the risk of moving them a little bit too soon because there are things in George's game right now that you could pick apart a little bit and say, well, who knows if this is going to translate? Who knows if he's going to tap into his power? But if he does, by this time next year, you're going to feel like you were burned unless your return was really significant. So I think those are probably the 3 top tier guys that don't get moved. I think that the 4 highest picks from this year would probably be in the next tier, with Slater DeBrun actually being the top of that group because of his age. But if there's a starter or a couple of starters that are the difference between this team being good and this team being elite next year, I have to think that a lot of guys are going to be on the table.
Well, speaking of trades, Vivek wants to give us your prospect package for either Pablo Lopez or Joe Ryan? Did you guys come up with any deals?
I, of course, took a look at this on baseball trade values. I will say, obviously, Joe Ryan is the guy you want because he's having a fantastic year. He's got 2 years of control left. But according to baseball trade values and Pablo Lopez, yeah, he's missed some time, but he's also got the same amount of team control left 2 years after the season. They're the same age. Joe Ryan, his surplus is 68. Pablo Lopez is just under 18. So I think it's going to cost a lot less to get Pablo Lopez. So that's probably where I would focus things. But this is where it's going to hurt no matter what to get him. If you're looking for a close to 1-to-1, you could trade a Kobe Mayo and a lesser piece for a Pablo Lopez. Kobe Mayo is worth 15.8. Or you could do a Esteban Mejia, who's worth 11.3, and a secondary piece, let's say Braxton Bragg at 5.8, a Griffo Farrell, wouldn't we love that? 4.3, just someone a little bit underneath or a couple guys. I think that's kind of what you're looking at for Pablo Lopez. If you want to go after Joe Ryan, I think you're looking at trading Samuel Basallo is 58, so you'd have to give Basallo plus some. It's just not worth it for me as much as I love Joe Ryan. Go get Pablo Lopez.
Well, let's pull out into a larger context here with Lopez. The Twins possibly are going to be sold. Now, Lopez's contract is reasonable by most standards, but it's one of the few long-term commitments that are still left on their payroll after the Carlos Correa trade. So if the Orioles said to the Twins, we'll take on most, if not all, of Lopez's remaining salary, I'd have to think that the price tag in terms of prospects is going to be significantly lower than it is for Joe Ryan, who has 2 years of arbitration left. Of the two guys, I feel like I would rather have Joe Ryan because he doesn't have the shoulder issue that has cost Pablo Lopez sometime this year, and that does give me a little bit of concern. But Lopez was having a great season up to that point. If I had to form a package for both, I think Esteban Mejia is a guy that I would reasonably build around in the Lopez deal. I might go Esteban Mejia and Joshua Lorenzo, and maybe that's not enough to get it done, especially the Twins want closer to major league ready talent. But at the same time, you're giving them payroll relief in return. I don't think you have to give up as much in terms of prospects. If you're going to go after Joe Ryan, I would not trade Kobe Mayo unless you come away from the next 2 months being unsure or convinced that he's not going to be a long-term solution in this lineup. If you decide that he isn't, then I think he's the first guy you look at moving. But beyond him, maybe a package centered around Boston Bateman, Austin Overn, and another bat towards the top of the prospect list gets it done. And at that point, you might have to dip into the 2025 draft class. But I would look at something like that for either one of those guys. Lopez is definitely more intriguing because you could do the salary dump option and not give up as much. And if he's healthy, get a pitcher who is just as good, if not better than Joe Ryan. But there feels like there's a little bit more security with Joe Ryan.
I like those. I will gladly give up Esteban Mejia and someone else for a Pablo Lopez.
Is it me? It's got to be me next. Let's see. Yep. Over under 3.5 relievers from the current bullpen who are in the 2026 opening day bullpen. That is from Connor. And Bobby Jones has a similar question. How many new faces / mainstays in the bullpen next year come from internal options versus major league free agent signings? Nick?
I want to say under 3.5 from the current bullpen are here in 2026. I think there are some good stories and guys that I think we all would like to see a little bit more of, and I think are probably deserving. But I'm projecting, I'm wish casting here. I would like heavy emphasis placed on the bullpen this offseason. So I think that's that's the area of the roster that gets a pretty big facelift this offseason. But yeah, I'm going to say under 3.5 current bullpen arms on the roster next year. And I don't know a number. How many? What was the second question? How many new faces? I think most of them are going to. I'm going to take a guess and just say external options are more likely.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I have the under, and if we're not counting Felix Bautista as a current bullpen arm because he's injured, then I think Keegan Aiken is back. Ynier Cano is an interesting case because his baseline stats this year are terrible, and hitters are especially teeing off his changeup and his curveball. But his expected stats overall have been closer to what you would expect from Cano. So there's an argument to be made for keeping him around, especially if you could add another late inning reliever or two to reduce his workload. After that, I don't know there's anybody that I would look at right now and say that they're absolutely assured of a job for next year. I think that there are guys that we know have good stuff. They're capable of, patches of success in the major leagues, whether it's Cade Stroud or Uramil Geraldo, but neither of those guys has quite put it together yet. And this also doesn't include the possibility that Cade Povich or Brandon Young are bumped back into the bullpen, or that maybe you bring back Tomoyuki Sagano and make him your long reliever. But regardless, I do agree with Nick that most of your reinforcements for the bullpen are going to be external. Not all of them are necessarily going to be major league free agents, even though I think the Orioles are going to have to go out of their comfort zone in that area a little bit this offseason. But I could still envision a scenario where you look for this offseason's Andrew Kittredge. We know that they were willing to give a multi-year deal to Jeff Hoffman, and that would have gone through if not for a physical. So maybe there's another pitcher of that mold that they sign in addition to the Kittredge type this offseason. And then you have Felix Bautista coming back. You have Keegan Aiken. You have a starter who moves down, and then you fill in the rest with waiver claims that you hope are the next Danny Colomb.
I'm going to take the opposite stance, and I'm going to take the over on the current internal options being the main of the majority of the bullpen. I think I'm just counting Bautista out. Hopefully he's not. Hopefully he's back. But just saying, assuming he's out, I think Cano and Aiken are back. I think Dietrich Enns and Rico Garcia are legit finds, and I think they're going to stick around and be in next year's bullpen. I also think Colin Selby has a really good chance. Tyler Wells, I know he's not currently in the bullpen, but he'll be back next year as long as he's fully healthy. Cade Stroud, probably AAA. Grant Wolfram, probably AAA, but, well, I don't know if he has any options left. But Chase McDermott could be there. I think you'll see one or two free agent signings, major league free agent signings. I would love to get Devin Williams in here on a rebound contract after he's had a really bad year for New York. I still think he's a talented reliever. Would love to have him, at least as a year stopgap or maybe longer. And then maybe there's a waiver claim that finds its way into the mix as well. So, yeah, I think the bullpen is the easiest thing to fix. And I think it's the area of this front office has proven to have been able to build a good bullpen for not much monetary stakes involved. So I'm going to, and I actually even think guys like Trey Gibson, Cameron Weston, these types of guys, I think could break in as relievers starting next year when we have more options, players with options in a bullpen that can come up and down. So I'm gonna remain optimistic on the internal options there.
We'll go to Daddy Batty, and who has a question about Trey Gibson. What is Trey Gibson's ETA? How big of a sample size of success until Mike Elias feels comfortable calling him up? I'm going to start with Nick on this one.
Hit the rewind button and listen to Bob's last answer that he gave. The bold take about Trey Gibson. I'm stealing that one.
Yeah, that is a bold prediction. If that doesn't happen, I'd say June, July, when it's needed, when he's needed, whether it's bullpen or rotation, if he's shoving in AAA. But I really do like that bold prediction, and I think it's got a chance.
I'm more June or July. I just went back and I looked up Kyle Bradis's tenure in Norfolk, and I actually took into account 2021 as opposed to 22 because that was a little bit of a fragmented over a couple of stints at Norfolk. But in 2021, Bradis threw 86 and 2/3 innings at Norfolk. Circumstances were much different, though, because you were coming off the COVID year. Bradis had lost a full season because of that. Not to mention the Orioles really didn't have anything to play for, and Bradis, frankly, was not as refined of a prospect when he got to AAA as he is right now. So I don't think Gibson's going to need that much time. Do I see him on the roster from day one next year? Not unless a lot goes sideways. And by that, I mean that you have a few injuries in spring training. Gibson looks really good, and you figure, you know what, let's bring him up. And if nothing else, he can just be an arm for us for the first month of the season. And we hope that guys come back. In an ideal scenario, you've got enough depth that you can stick him down in Norfolk and not put him in the major leagues at a point where you're rushing him up. You're putting him in at a time that's good for his development and allows him to be successful. And I think by June, hopefully you're going to be in a position to do that.
We got next one from Yoni says, can we draw any conclusions from Ike Irish not playing catcher yet?
Yes. he's not going to be much more than an emergency catcher. I think he's an outfielder, first baseman. I believe there was an anecdote. I apologize. I cannot remember where I saw this, but when the Orioles drafted him and called him, they asked, where would you like to play? And he said, it doesn't matter. I'll play anywhere. And they said, okay, you're an outfielder. So I don't know how true that is. It's just an anecdote I must have picked up somewhere. And again, apologies. I can't remember where, but yeah, I think, you can basically, he's an Ethan Anderson type. He's not a Siler Sardwan type.
I don't think anybody with the Orioles is going to come out and directly say that we're not going to catch Ike Irish at all. And I'm sure that if he goes down to instructs after the season, you're going to hear about how he's working on his catching. He might even get in for a game or two late this season or early next year behind the plate. But I go back to what I said when we did our top 50. And at this point, I just kind of want to cut him loose, put him in right field, first base, and just let the bat shine. And I also had this thought earlier today when I saw Yoni's question come through of, well, maybe if there's a point where Iris and Caden Bodine aren't on the same roster this season or next, maybe then that's when you see Iris catch. But I thought about that a little bit more, and I'm like, how likely is that? I think those two guys are pretty much going to be on the same roster for the foreseeable future. And if they aren't, it's going to be because of some flukish circumstance where one of them got promoted a week later than the other one did. They're part of the same draft class. They're the same age. Bodine's a really advanced defensive catcher. They're going to be on the same roster for a while. And as long as you have Bodine there, you don't need to catch Iris.
Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway. He's not catching because he's not a catcher. And I said this before, I hope he doesn't catch a single game because you don't need him to. The bat is that good, potentially. And I hate that they announced him as a catcher on draft day. He's an outfielder. That's where he's going to play.
Next question is from EJ, who says, do the Orioles give Zack Eflin a qualifying offer? Zach?
Right now, I'm going to say no, just because I don't know what those medicals look like. And if the Orioles have any concerns that the injury issues that Eflin had this season are going to have a lasting effect, at least for the next year, I don't think that they're going to take the chance of giving him the qualifying offer, knowing that, one, he's probably going to accept it at that rate, and two, if he's healthy or he's in this sort of state that he's been in this season where he's on and off the IL, that's not only a salary north of $20 million that you're paying somebody, but also someone that's probably going to be taking a rotation spot. And I feel like they're going to want the flexibility to build up from the back end a little bit while at the same time acquiring that top tier starter. So I do think that having Eflin accept the qualifying offer would throw a wrench into that. I will say this, though, which is that if they give him the qualifying offer, that gives me some confidence in his health a little bit because the Orioles should know his medicals better than anybody, or at least better than any team at this point. But based on what we've seen this year, I just don't think that the reward is worth the risk.
Yeah, that was my thought. Like, you got what, like 3 months between now and the deadline to extend the qualifying offers, so you're gonna have a better idea about the health, and you're gonna be able to do all the deep dive medical stuff to see exactly where he's at ahead of time. But it's just I mean, he's out there saying he's worried about being able to pick up his kids in the future. Like, this is how bad the back pain is getting, and he needed to go through with this. Like, go have your surgery, go get better, go pick up your girls. Like, it's too risky. The back is too risky for me. I don't think you need to do it. I prefer they don't. The money is not the issue. Pay him $20 million. If you think he's going to be healthy, pay him the $20 million for 1 year. I'm fine with that. But it's to pay him $20+ million and then have to watch this team rely on him to round out next year's rotation and hope he stays healthy. Like, I think that's a big ask that I think we can move on from that at this point.
Yeah. Would I be mad if Zack Eflin came back? No, I would not be mad.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a team that did not pick up Danny Coulombe's like $3 million option last year because of injury concerns. So I don't think they're going to offer the qualifying offer to a guy, which is going to be like $20 million. I could see them potentially later in the offseason, if he doesn't sign anywhere, bringing him back for like a 1 year, $10 million deal, depending on how things go. But no, I hope he gets healthy. I hope he comes back and has a great season next year. If it's for us, even better. But I don't see it.
And as I always love to see when we do a mailbag episode, we've gotten a couple of live listener questions. I'm going to go to those now. I'm going to start with Mark. And that is, what makes Enrique Bradfield Jr. a significantly superior prospect to Austin Overn as two guys with very similar tool sets? So, Bob, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm not sure I would say that Bradfield is a significantly superior prospect at this point. But I do give him the nod in my rankings. I think Overn's ceiling is higher. I just think Bradfield is a little bit better on defense, a little bit faster. When he's healthy, I think he'll steal more bases than Overn, even though he's fantastic at those things as well. Overn has the edge with the arm and the power, but I think Bradfield is, I think he's going to be able to hang and have like a 330, 340-ish on base. And with his speed and ability to cause chaos, I think that's going to be enough with his other tools to be like a 4 or 5 WAR player at his peak with the defense in center field. Also think the intangibles Bradfield brings, and maybe Overn does too, but I know for a fact that Bradfield is a leader in every sense of the word. So I wouldn't say it's a significantly superior prospect, but I do give him the edge over Overn at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think you just see him Bradfield ranked higher on a lot of lists because he had that long proven track record at Vanderbilt. You don't need to, of course, you want to make sure the hit tool progresses, and every little bit you can get out of that hit tool is going to help his major league profile. But I mean, as is, he's got a profile that will work in the major leagues in some sort of role when he was drafted. And so now it's just expanding that hit tool and trying to get more out of that. Overn had, they drafted him because of some change. Well, they drafted him because many reasons, but the reason the Orioles were quicker to pull the trigger on Overn was because he made the tweaks in the Cape Cod League, found quick, instant success over there, and the Orioles felt comfortable with that and pulled the trigger early on him. But, he really struggled in his second year at USC. So I think there's a lot more swing and miss. There's a lot more chase. Like, there's a lot more holes in his game than Bradfield's. So Bradfield was the guy who we thought would be pushing for the major leagues right now at this point without all those injuries. Overn's going to be a little bit more of a project. In the end, could Overn overtake Bradfield on our ranking list? Probably. But I think both are, great prospects to have in this organization. And the fact that Overn is now in AA and excelling as well as he has these first few weeks, he's going to be a guy that next year, I think this offseason, people are going to have their look backs at the Orioles organization, and they're going to see what Overn was able to do, and they're going to dig a little bit deeper under the hood and see a lot of things that they like. They're going to go back to that freshman year college profile of his and he's going to make a lot more noise. There's going to be a lot more written about him going into next year as a guy to watch, the sleeper, 2026 sleeper in this system. But yeah, it's just Bradfield's floor was just so incredibly high that I think that's why he's so much higher ranked on all these lists.
Yeah, and I will acknowledge, if you look at our top 50, you see Enrique Bradfield ranked 7th and Austin Overn 22nd. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I think you both accurately touched on them, with Bradfield's pedigree, having a longer and better track record at Vanderbilt than Overn did. Overn, you have to keep in mind, also was a two-way athlete until pretty recently, so he's definitely not as polished of a baseball player as Bradfield is. And look, if not for Bradfield's injuries, with his production, I think he would be in AAA right now. And maybe even if we're not talking about him as the Orioles opening day center fielder in 2026, he's at least in the conversation for the 2026 roster. So the injuries have definitely set him back this year, but I don't think that they've put a significant dent in his prospect stock. With Overn, I definitely would agree that I think the ceiling could be higher, especially because there's a lot more raw power with Overn than there is with Bradfield. But Bradfield also has the kind of defense that I know if he plays every day in the major leagues, he's going to be an annual Gold Glove finalist, if not winner, at his peak. Even if he only hits in the 250s or 260s a lot of years, he's still going to put up a 341 base percentage and probably swipe over 30 bags. Overn, there's just such a wide range of outcomes right now because of the hit tool and because of the swing and miss issues that he's much harder to pin down. But I would definitely agree that when you look at his power, it's much better tool than Bradfield's power. And Overn, because of that, might have the louder skill set of the two. Go to this question now from BC Baseball 8. This came in over on YouTube. When do you guys think pitchers like Chase McDermott, Keegan Gillis, Houston Roth, etc., would be called up to fill in for the bullpen to see what those guys have? So some interesting thoughts here. McDermott and Roth already on the 40-man roster. Gillis is going to be Rule 5 eligible again this offseason. Maybe you at least give one of the three a shot late in the year. What are your thoughts on that?
I actually think minor quibble, but Houston Roth was DFA'd and cleared waivers and outrighted to AAA, but could easily be put back on. I was actually pretty bummed that he didn't get into a game when he was up for those few days, but it's okay. I think Chase McDermott, you'll see him September 1st. I think they'll bring up a position player and a pitcher September 1st when the rosters expand by 2. I think Chase McDermott will be that pitcher for the bullpen at that time, most likely. See what you got there. Roth, I think, could be an emergency fill-in. Gillis needs to figure out AAA before he can come up. I think he's just got to get used to the AAA ball, the AAA strike zone. Still a fan of him, but he's having his struggles right now. He's got to figure that out first. I also think Carlos Tavera is getting ready to come back from a rehab assignment. Maybe he could be potentially a guy if there are some injuries or bad performances. We'll see. But yeah, I wouldn't hate seeing that, but I think they got to take a look at the guys right now that are like Guillermo Gerardo. He's got good stuff. He's given up a lot of home runs, walked a ton of batters tonight. Corbin Martin, he flashes some great stuff. Talked about Enns and Garcia. Cade Stroud flashes. He had a bad outing today. Grant Wolfram flashes. So I think got to see those guys first, but Chase McDermott for sure.
Yeah, I want to see McDermott. I made it pretty clear. I'm done. I don't want to see him start another game. And I say that with all the love and affection that I have for Chase McDermott. And it's a lot. But I almost wonder if they just keep him in Norfolk in this role. And again, I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's the injury. I think it's on purpose, but I would almost be curious to see if they maybe just go ahead and shut him down or let him ride out the AAA season and then just kind of, all right, we found it. We figured this out. We're going to go into next season. Let's go rest. I just keep seeing if there's another name. Like I don't know if you guys have looked into him more. I'm sure you guys have looked into a lot more than I have. I have not. I haven't even watched him yet. I'm just looking at the numbers in the stat sheets. Carson Ragsdale looks like he might be really interesting, and he's 27. So I almost wonder if you're going to give someone else, Roth is there as strictly emergency. I could see him getting released this offseason. Keegan Gillis, yet he hasn't been able to figure out in AAA yet. McDermott, they could end up just letting him ride it out and shut him down. Could you look at a guy like Carson Ragsdale and say in September and be like, is there anything here with him? Is he going to be a bullpen option for next year, and give him a look? I wouldn't hate that at all.
I would love that. Yeah, I think he's looked really good. I think that it could be a great find potentially there. Waiver claim, again, goes to next year's bullpen as well. 3 option years remaining for him. Has yet to make his major league debut. I think he actually started a game and went 3 innings. Maybe they're thinking about stretching him out. So I don't know, but that's a good call. I like Ragsdale.
Yeah, Ragsdale is interesting because he's kind of been, well, up until this season, he was actually primarily a starter in the Giants system. And even for them this season, 14 of his 18 appearances at AAA Sacramento came as starts. So the Orioles trying him in a bullpen role, they must see something. So I would not mind seeing Ragsdale up at all late this season. I agree with Nick that I think it could go one of 2 ways with McDermott. And if they do shut him down, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for McDermott. It could just be that, he had the injury issues earlier this year. He had the challenges adjusting when he came back, and now he's in a bullpen role, seems to be settling in a little bit. Maybe the Orioles decide, all right, that's good enough. We'll worry about next year when it comes. I don't see Gillis getting there unless it's a situation where it's an emergency. The same with Roth. But Ragsdale, if you want to look for a wild card, that's a good option. And we will go now into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And when you're at the ballpark this season, be sure to check out the beer stand behind home plate, where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers. The Bird is the Word. And now we're going to go into a question from The Bird is the Word over our Discord. And he wants to know the answer to what seems to be the biggest question of the day, every single day on our Discord, which is, what do you do about Ryan Mountcastle? And the specific question from The Bird is the Word is, what do you see the first base DH catcher situation looking like in 2026? Does Mountcastle get traded? Nick, I'll start with you.
They're going to sign somebody, I'm sure, to throw into the mix. I said earlier, I think Basallo catches a lot more than people think. Give Adley some more time off at DH. Does Ryan Mountcastle get traded? I don't think he does, because I don't know what team would want to trade for him. Unless there's maybe we get closer to Rule 5 protection deadline and somebody has a Rule 5 guy that they aren't protecting and the Orioles are just fiending over this guy and you make a swap there. But I don't know. We've all made our Mountcastle stances pretty clear over the last year plus at this point. And I'll just say I am greatly enjoying, for financial purposes, that he's having a good week here. Hope he continues that up for as long as possible. But if the Ryan Mountcastle era ends this offseason, I can't say I'll be a little sad. I'll just say that. I do have a soft spot for him because I was thinking about this. The very first minor league game I went to as a credentialed writer was Salem, Virginia. Frederick Keys versus Salem Red Sox. Young lefty named Keegan Aiken was on the mound. A young outfielder named Adamar Rafaela was hitting nukes, and I was falling in love. Miss that guy. I think he's still playing professionally in the Netherlands right now, last time I checked. And then there's another young man at shortstop named Ryan Mountcastle. He hit a bomb in that game, and I was not allowed to talk to him afterwards. Instead, I got Mike Burke. If you never heard of Mike Burke, well, there's many reasons you never heard of Mike Burke. I was probably the first and only professional interview he did. But that was a memorable experience, and I was specifically excited to go to that game and see recent first-round pick and top prospect Ryan Mountcastle play shortstop, and I got to do that and enjoy that. So I will be sad if the era ends, but yeah, like we mentioned earlier, he's getting squeezed out, and I know Andy Casca had a great article about Mountcastle knows this. He understands that. He sees what the future may hold. And it's a lot of uncertainty, unfortunately. But I think this is a good thing for the organization that we're bringing up this talent that is forcing guys to step up. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But regardless, yes, I just hope this issue is resolved shortly because the daily Ryan Mountcastle stuff it's a lot. We'll say that.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I stick my nose in it sometimes. And look, I want to be very clear. I am a big fan of Ryan Mountcastle, the person. I mean, I don't know him personally, but just watching him on the screen, he's actually one of the guys that has personality out on the field, like fun guy to watch. He was the first, rookie coming up that 2020 season, the first spark of hope. Like, I was dreaming big on Mountcastle for a while, but I just think at this point in time, I see him being non-tendered. I agree. I don't think he's going to be traded because I don't think anyone's going to want to trade for him when they know they could just wait for him to be non-tendered and then sign him to a cheaper deal if they want to give him a flyer. And I hope he takes off from here. But I just think the time in Baltimore is at its crossroads. It's coming to an end. I just think between Kobe Mayo, Samuel Basallo, Adley Rutschman, like TT Bowens could come up and give you a spark at first base if you really needed to. I don't see it. I don't see the room. And I know Sterling and Ben will be disappointed about that, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, it is going to be a little bit weird and in some ways a little bit sad if it comes to an end, because not only was Ryan Mountcastle one of the first prospects that we really talked about a lot on this show, he was one of the first prospects that I talked about in the original version of this show back in 2016, which neither one of you were part of. And Bob, you and I were at BSL at the time, and I don't think you ever listened to an episode of it, but we were talking about him then. And so it would be sad in a way to see it. And I agree with Bob. Love the personality. Love, when you see Mountcastle at his best, it feels like there is a little bit of a spark plug and a little bit of an energy that he brings. But we haven't seen it now in, 4 years? So I just don't know when you're going to get it out of him. And if you look at the team now, you have Kobe Mayo, you have Samuel Basallo, Adley Rutschman, Colton Cowser, Dylan Beavers. Those guys aren't going anywhere. Tyler O'Neill is not going anywhere. I'm just going to say that right now. Tyler O'Neill is not going anywhere. And they probably are going to add a bat or two this offseason. So I don't know where there's room for Ryan Mountcastle at that point. And the best case scenario for Mountcastle and for the Orioles is that he's healthy over the next month and a half, and he does enough that you get something for him in a trade. Because otherwise, I agree. I think he's going to be non-tendered.
And the biggest takeaway that you'll leave this episode with is there are super old episodes of On the Verge somewhere out there, and someone is going to find them and listen to them, I'm sure.
Might be me. Might be me.
And for that does it for this episode. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels. And we're going to do a first here. Someone's going to get a Patreon shout out at the end of an episode and the beginning of one next week, because we're very excited about this one.
Yeah, we had a person sign up while we were recording tonight live. So that was exciting. Yeah, thank you to, I want to check our chat just to make sure I get the name right, Kristen Yates, who signed up for a year at the AA level. So thank you very much, Kristen. If you're related to Evan Yates, he's having a heck of a year. So, and we'll do that again for you in the beginning of the next episode, like we always do for the new patrons.
And as a reminder of our Patreon perks, you get bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. All you have to do to access that is join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob, Phil, and Nick Stevens, this is Zack Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.